All right, welcome back to the program. Hour number 3 already. Can you believe it? I just love days like today. We have a lot of good callers and a lot of good topics, and the time just seems to flitter right by. Well, we have in the studio with us my longtime friend Ken Pittman, who went from being a listener on WBSM and a regular caller to hosting your own afternoon show, and now you're doing Saturdays.
Yeah.
Because reality wouldn't allow you to do it every day, right? You had other
at the time,
raising a family. And,
it's just a lot to do and not enough hours in the day, I guess.
Yeah. So welcome in. You've got the Saturday show from 9 to noon. Great show. Love to listen to it. And
thank you.
So we're going to be talking in a few minutes about a charitable event that you're involved in. But before we do that, I can't let you in the studio without talking politics. An amazing couple of days here. Yesterday, Trump pulling out of the Iran nuclear agreement and made a good case for doing so. It was a campaign promise, and he said, "When I want the world to know when I make a promise, I'm going to stick to it," and I stay to it. What do you think the long-range implications are with this?
Well, I think he's going to get his way. I think the Europeans. This was really about money. This is about the Europeans. Were interested in the new market of Iran, which is why they were okay with this deal, even though it really didn't hold Iran accountable for what they were doing in their military installations in terms of nuclear research and weaponizing the program that they had. Same thing happened in North Korea. I'll tie the two events together because I think they could be tied. It's just a theory, but it's interesting to me that Mike Pompeo, the director of CIA, on April 8th goes to Pyongyang, North Korea, and he spends quite a long time with Kim Jong-un. And he comes out of there, and the peace process all of a sudden begins. And it looks like it's going very much in the right direction. And then we have President Trump suddenly announcing we're not going to continue on with the Iran farce. We're going to pull out. Just over the years, I've been reading articles which would strongly indicate North Korea is a vital part of the research and provides scientists for the Iranians. And if I'm reading the right way, the tea leaves the right way, it's possible that, Trump and Pompeo said, look, I know Iran sends you cargo, they send you food, and they send you this and that. How about if you stop helping them with their nuclear research so they can't continue, and we'll provide these things for you? I'm wondering if that's not the case, because the events are right next to each other. Right. And it just seemed the timing's very interesting.
Well, we had a caller about an hour ago too, also tie the Chinese into this, and the fact that the whole tariff thing, and the whole trade war thing seemed to emerge at the same time. And to what degree did Trump go in there and really lay it on President Singh? Singh is his name, right? Singh, is it Singh or Xi?
Talking about
the Chinese president? Yeah.
Moon.
The Chinese guy. I can't think of his name, but off the top of my head,
Moon Jae-in, I think.
All right, so. Now you get the Chinese guy going in there, and he's calling Kim Jong-un over to Beijing and saying, hey, we don't want a nuclear war. We don't want any conflict here, because if there's conflict, we get refugees. We have to, get involved in it. We don't want to get involved in a war. And we certainly don't want a trade war with the United States, and Trump is threatening us with one. So you get Trump on one side. I think what you're saying makes perfect sense. Trump on one side is saying, look, we can replace what Iran is doing for you, we can do it, and we can do it better.
And then some.
Yeah, and then some. And then you get the Chinese squeezing on the other side, saying, look, we don't want a war over here, and we certainly don't want trade sanctions with the U.S.
Because otherwise, I think the extended hand of a guy who really is a mass murderer, a tyrant, a dictator, extending his hand suddenly, within 2 weeks after Mike Pompeo leaves. And I understand the Olympics kind of paved the way, and the south of North Korea. There's been a development, but this is more than a development. This is unprecedented what we're seeing here. We're seeing the leaders actually meet on the border and talk of goodwill, talk that the war is over. Of course, now the dual information in America is you've got people agreeing with the South Korean president, yes, that Donald Trump did have a role in this, and then you have the other side of saying, no, I agree with Kim Jong-un that Donald Trump had nothing to do with this.
Right. So, obviously there is no way you can even make a cogent argument that Trump didn't have something to do with this. We had appeasement for how many decades, as recently as the last administration, just appeasing these people, giving them a little bone here and there. And so obviously Trump comes into office.
Well, if Truman dropped the bomb, if Obama got bin Laden, if Kennedy put a man on the moon, and Trump was part of the peace process. Mm-hmm. If we're being fair.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Does he get a Nobel Peace Prize or a nomination?
I think they'd sooner give it to Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
I really mean that, too.
Yeah, no, you're right. They probably would. Yeah.
And he's executed even family members with anti-aircraft gunfire, 50 cal gunfire, and just turn family members into mist, basically. But they'll still give it to him first, I think.
Well, you had Begin, Sadat, and Jimmy Carter all win together that
deservedly,
year. Deservedly. And I think that if they were to give it to all three, the two Koreans and Trump, I think that would be deserving as well.
Yeah, I think realistically you'll see the Koreans get it and Trump on the outside. I strongly doubt, given the climate, that he'll be anywhere near the Nobel Peace Prize.
Interesting to see the New York Times yesterday, too, bashing Pompeo all over the place. Where the hell's Pompeo? Or, we got this big deal with Iran and the other. Yeah. Meanwhile, he's over there getting these three guys released. So, once again, the newspapers...
doing something the other administrations failed to do. I mean, So,
and the press looks absolutely stupid once again through this whole thing.
Yeah, in particular, the New York Times was, calling him AWOL.
Yeah.
Because of this incredible, important, perhaps radical, in their opinion, decision by President Trump to get out of the Iranian nuclear program deal. Where's Mike Pompeo? Well, he's flying home right now with 3 American prisoners from North Korea.
Busy. Yeah. A little busy at the moment. Yeah. So we've got I read something this week that absolutely stunned me because I don't think I've ever seen this in my lifetime. We've got near full employment in this country. Everybody's working. Maybe right after Korea, maybe in the 50s we might have experienced that, but I wasn't around then. In my lifetime, I think this is the first time I've ever heard...
Sub 4? I've never heard of it.
Never heard of it?
No.
I mean, this is the quickest that an economic recovery has gone from 0 to 60 in my lifetime anyway, probably the history of this world.
And I don't think we can totally discount anything that Barack Obama's done. I think that, for him having the last 8 years, and I think there has to be something that he's done in part to give him a little credit for this. But I mean, his last budget was over in September of 2017. So anything after that, you got to credit Donald Trump. But it started before Donald Trump. So I want to be fair about that. But Donald Trump has absolutely done some things. In June of 2016, Barack Obama promised that manufacturing jobs were not going to return. And you should have believed him because on his last month in office in December of 2016, we were negative 38,000 manufacturing jobs. And 1 year later, we're positive 138,000, and now as many as 400,000 manufacturing jobs have come back to the United States since November of 2017.
But we saw after the election, as soon as the election was over, the consumer confidence index went up, business index went up. I mean, people began to hire, people began to invest because they felt good about what was coming.
The market was flying at one point.
Absolutely. So that is a direct result of the election results. So are we close to giving Trump any kind of credit for what he's done?
I'm not sure this generation of media is going to do that, and it won't be up to them. An interesting quote by George W. Bush. He was reading a book on the legacy of George Washington, and when he was asked what his legacy was going to be, he says, well, I don't even know if my grandkids will know because we're still trying to figure out George Washington's.
Right. Yeah, Bush had made the point when he was being judged on Iraq that the historians hopefully will get it straight someday.
Right. That's one of the more tumultuous administrations for sure. That's when I think the turbulence started to hit in terms of partisanship, much more than when Clinton was in, because I think, for the most part, Newt Gingrich, I mean, aside from threatening to shut down the government and doing that with Bill Clinton, he forced the president to sign things that would cause surpluses in budgets, and it was great for the country. And there was a lot better. The relationship between those two was a heck of a lot better than Pelosi, Bush, or anybody with President Obama or President Trump. I would think, because even some Republicans openly disregard President Trump's integrity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all knew Trump was coming from the middle anyway. I mean, he had the never Trumpers on the right, he had the Democrats on the left, and the media, all over the place.
You know what I say to that? I tell people who question my vote, I didn't vote for Donald Trump for who I thought he was in 1985, 1995, or 2010. I'm offering the leap of faith that this guy decided to be a patriot and an adult as of 2016, based on what he said. And when I look at what he's done in office to this point, I don't think he is necessarily a train wreck. I think that they're very reluctant to offer him any credit for some of the things he has been doing And so, and the other part is, I'm very happy that I helped to stop Hillary Clinton from becoming the next president based on what I know about her.
Absolutely.
I did give my vote, it was with a grain of salt.
So, we've heard about this great big blue wave that was going to come. And, there's traditionally always the midterm elections where the power, that's in the White House gets swept out of power, and not always, but it does happen. It happens quite often. But so that was the expectation, and the expectation was Trump would be repudiated at the halfway mark. We don't see that anymore. I'm not hearing about a big blue wave anymore. I'm hearing actually that there's a very good possibility that the Republicans are going to hang on to the House.
I think when you look at their best opportunity in their so far through the media and through the events, I think they point to the Parkland school shooting in Florida. That's going to get it done. As people get a bird's eye view of what happened there, it's very difficult to say why should we punish Donald Trump, or why should we punish people who protect the Second Amendment, and specifically to get them out of office over that. I mean, there's a lot of things that weren't done that have nothing to do with the Second Amendment. And I think that was the loudest indication of the blue wave. I don't really see a great argument for what he's done so far. A lot of people are very happy with their tax returns by comparison. I think the guy's talking about securing the borders. For the Democrats, let's talk just locally for a moment. It's very difficult for me to understand how Congressman Keating and Kennedy can possibly be okay with open borders, while the police chiefs in the state of New Bedford, for example, can point to fentanyl from Mexico as being the cause of deaths, overdoses here in New Bedford. You've got to do something about the border, even if you're just, for your own local politics. How do you hold the position that we should have open borders, even though it brings the free flow of dangerous drugs to our communities?
And look at what's happening in California. I mean, just last night you had another community, the first one in Los Angeles County, to actually vote to oppose Jerry Brown's sanctuary state law that was signed into law, and now join the Trump administration's lawsuit against California. It was a 5-0 vote on this panel, the school, city council, or whatever. So I mean, you're seeing a revolt in California, of all places, in Southern California. Where the heart of the liberal base is.
Yeah, without the state of California, it's very difficult for the Democrats to retain the White House. It's the most important Democratic state. Yeah. And I think it's almost like the taxation. They get to the threshold. The Democrats in this case will get to the threshold and see where that is. How far can we push the public before they push back? And then I think they back off. But I think Jerry Brown has met that threshold. He's pushing a little too far. The incrementalism that works for liberal politics, if they push it too fast, people notice and they stand up against it. So it's got to be slower. He's not being patient enough with his agenda. So you're right. You're seeing a little bit of a pushback. 5-0 is a big deal. Yeah,
it is a very big deal in Southern California. Let's move to some state stuff. We've got an election coming up for governor, and a Republican governor in a blue state continues to be the most popular governor in the entire country. Although most would probably argue that Charlie Baker is more Democrat than he is Republican, a rhino. I'm not sure why he ran as a Republican. He should have run as a Democrat, and he'd have probably even higher approval rating. Who knows? But so he's a guarantee pretty much for re-election this year.
I think it's his. I'm not sure he's a conservative at all. I know he's not a conservative, but I think he's too fiscally responsible to be a Democrat. But he's not necessarily the Republican that people have in mind. I'll say that. He is a Northeast brand of the Republican Party, which is why, but he's a good example, Barry, of why I think the two-party system works, because you have, within the Republican Party, you have coalitions. You have the Charlie Baker faction. You have the Issa faction. You have the Trent Gowdy faction. And put them all together, you've got a pretty wide platform, a lot of ideas. Same thing with the Democrats. I think the Democrats, the Midwestern and Southern Democrats, are more conservative than the delegation from Massachusetts, for example. So I do believe in the two-party system.
If only we had one in the state, right?
Well, right. Right. It's almost a monopoly. I mean, they control, besides the corner office, they control 85% of the legislation and legislature. So it's difficult for Republicans to get seats. I just think that we get out hustled. The Republican Party gets out hustled. I don't know that we, and I'll blame Mitt Romney and Charlie Baker. Both governors, I think, did nothing or next to nothing to grow the party, and I think that's part of the responsibility.
Well,
of
there's very little. Yeah, there's very little in the way of recruiting.
Right.
You know, you look here in New Bedford area, and I mean, the folks that are in charge of recruiting the Republican Party they're non-existent.
Now that's you could talk about AWOL. You could talk about not having the tools, and I know that people show up to meetings all the time, and they go through the motions, but for some reason they're not getting any traction, and so to continue to do the same things over and over, it makes no sense. Right,
and then you get some Republican candidates like Shauna O'Connell that catch fire, and I think Shauna O'Connell could catch fire around the state if she was to present those ideas.
This particular district is doable. I mean, I think with the right candidate, Keating, who is no Barney Frank when it comes to the fishing industry. Barney Frank, if Barney Frank was in office today, it wouldn't be the city council calling for this big summit. It would be Barney Frank, and it would happen. Yeah. Right? Because it did happen. It happened in Washington.
And the same thing with Kennedy, with all due respect to,
absolutely.
Ted Kennedy would have been all over this thing like white on rice.
No question about it.
Yeah, and we wouldn't be begging, what's her name? Elizabeth Warren is going to be in town on Saturday. It's going to be a love fest. It's a, town meeting. It's controlled by, it's basically campaigning on the taxpayer dollar.
I'm hoping some guys in the fishing industry, ask some questions and hold her accountable, because I think she has been less than interested in helping them out. And, the way it was explained to me was not only is it an issue where they have to take on the environmentalists, which neither Markey or Elizabeth Warren feels comfortable taking on people who traditionally give to them. But it's also a very complex issue. It takes a lot of studying and a lot of effort, and they have 80 other, irons in the fire, and they're not willing to commit to it, like Barney Frank and Ted Kennedy somehow did.
Yeah. It's funny. It's difficult to really gauge sentiment when you're sitting here behind the microphone and talk to a lot of the same folks, or people who listen to my show and call into my show are generally more on the same wavelength politically. So I'm getting a sense out there that there is a lot of discontent with Liz Warren, even amongst Democrats. People will call me and say, I'm a Democrat, but I don't think that she's representing us. And it's not an ideological thing so much as the fact that she's just AWOL. She's just not here. There's that word again, AWOL.
Interestingly, she's more popular in terms of percentages nationally with Democrats than she is in her own state. Those who know her best, she has some high unfavorability ratings within her party. And I think as the polls are taken, when you get closer to the general election, I don't think they'll be as frank with their sentiments about it, and they'll get behind her, and her favorability will go up. But, just getting the frank discussion with Democrats, typical Democrats in Massachusetts, she's not necessarily the most liked elected person around right now.
Well, I think Jeff Deal is probably going to be the guy that's going to challenge her, and I think they're making the same old mistake. And I'm disappointed in Deal in that they have an opportunity here, particularly with the fishing industry, and particularly with the fact that a lot of folks feel that she's been AWOL and doesn't represent the state. It's not talking to Trump. Again, I'll have Democrats call me up and say, why isn't she talking to Trump? We lost. Okay, fine, we'll get it back in 4 years, but she has to, as part of her job, talk to Trump. And she won't do that. I think Jeff Deal, just setting up in New Bedford, be here all the time. I mean, if you take New Bedford, that's a major crack.
Yeah, I think you're not going to win Boston. You're not going to win Cambridge and Newton, that area. But I think you have a chance, if you're a Republican, if you're conservative, and you're for the working class. You have to be for the working class to win here. And I think Republicans are. I think not all of them, but I think enough of them are.
But they write it off, though, I think. They write off areas like New Bedford, Fall River, and don't bother campaigning or spending the time there that they need to do.
You're right. And the strategy should be not to win you're never going to win Boston, but to win the satellite cities, to win the gateway cities, Lowell, New Bedford, Fall River. I had a guest on, Darius Mitchell, who was running for Senate unsuccessfully in the state, but I agreed with him. Go after Springfield, go after Worcester, New Bedford, Lowell. Don't bother with Boston.
Yeah.
Because they will hear you.
In the Westwoods and all of those places, you're gonna win those anyway. So you don't need to march in their parades. You need to be down here, and you need to have an office here, and you need to be here regularly. And Jeff Deal should have a presence outside of Oak on Saturday. I don't know whether they will be, but they should have a presence out there. That's just my thought.
Yeah, I think it's probably smart for him to do that. It appears that he has a lot of the momentum and is on track to represent the Republicans in the race. And there's an ad that came out. I think John Kingston sponsored the ad, and it's a good point. I mean, if he couldn't beat Mike Brady, how can he beat Elizabeth Warren? I mean, I know Mike Brady. I mean, I don't know how he's in office, but he's in office, and if it's difficult to imagine, him not defeating him, but going after Elizabeth Warren, who's going to have the backing of the whole state.
Right. Baker is undoubtedly going to be reelected. There's no question.
That's going to
about
help
that. And, unless a space station falls on him or something. But he's going to.
Boy, you never know with all these things that come out of nowhere. I mean, but
yeah, absolutely.
Assuming that Charlie Baker has no, scandal, I expect he'll easily slide in.
Yeah.
And continue as governor. But I think that does help. Republicans in the race. We'll see if that's enough.
So what does it say though in liberal Massachusetts, where the most progressive candidate, Seti Warren, had to drop out because he couldn't raise money?
Yeah, well, I think it's the brand. Seti Warren's a likable guy. But I think people are okay with him being the mayor. I don't think they're okay with him going any higher in office. I just think there wasn't the confidence level there. They're fickle. The Democrats in Massachusetts, they're very fickle. They have an idea of where the sailing is on each candidate. We see it locally here in New Bedford. We see it in a statewide race and in a national race.
Mm-hmm. Let's just quickly, and we've got some guests that we're going to bring up here in just a couple of seconds, but let's quickly come local. The big story of the day continues to be cobblestones. What's your take on this? I've been
no, school me. I'm unaware.
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure what you're speaking of.
Oh, the spiked cobblestones. You haven't
I thought you meant the restaurant.
No. The spiked cobblestones
Yes.
that the mayor
Yes.
maliciously and cruelly placed on a median strip on a highway to keep people from standing there.
They're not bear traps.
Yeah.
They're not bear traps. They're a deterrent to stop people from panhandling in areas where they can be hurt and where they can, cause traffic problems and things like that. I don't think you can demand, because the ACLU would jump all over local government and sue them. And so I don't think you can demand anybody not panhandle, but you can ask the public for cooperation. Don't give to them directly, because you might be contributing to a drug problem. You might be contributing to something that's going to hurt them. Give to the pantries, give to the assets that are here that are going to absolutely provide services they need. Don't panhandle. If you stop panhandling, they won't be there eventually. They're there because you give. They'll be going away. If there's any time period where where nobody is giving.
Yeah, they'll move to the next place. But so now the mayor installs these so-called spiked cobblestones. They're simply cobblestones that are kind of pointed up on an angle to discourage people from standing on them on a median strip in the middle of a state highway where nobody's supposed to be anyway. Right. And you get three members of the council, Giesta and Dunn and Abreu, accusing the mayor of being mean and cruel and intentionally wanting to hurt people. And then you get Montigny going on Channel 4 and going on Facebook saying that this is stupid and not responsible and mean. I mean, what the hell? This is a vicious debate over something that just seems to be a little bit more vicious than it needs to be.
I don't know Ms. Giesta or Mrs. Giesta, but I know Mr. Dunn and Mr. Abreu. I think they're both excellent counselors. I disagree with them on this issue. I think you have to provide some sort of deterrent. The mayor's hands are tied. He cannot do things legally to make sure panhandlers aren't here. There's, the laws of vagrancy, the laws of loitering. The ACLU, and they'll come in and they'll sue and they'll do it for their own pockets. The ACLU only sues. People think they're out for the little guy, and they're stuffing their pockets with these wins, and that's the way to get to the money. But they'll come and they'll win a lot of these. I don't think they'll win them all, but if you don't have the deep pockets, if you're fiscally responsible, you don't want to risk it, you just have to do some other things. And he's trying to be creative. I have to commend the mayor for trying some things.
Brian Gomes, who's never really been a huge supporter of the mayor, says this is an excellent idea. We should do it everywhere where we have intersections like this.
Interesting. There's that mix in the city council. Yeah. Like I said, I think that Mr. Dunn and Mr. Abreu are both good counselors. I disagree with them on this issue.
Yeah. All right, let me take a break, and then we're going to talk about a fundraiser that you're involved in for a real good cause. So we're going to do that right after this break, and we'll be back. 508-996-0500. Ken Pittman is with me at 1420 WBSM. Stay around.